Hey everyone, it's Kabir here. So in last session we saw some properties of CSS. So today we are going to see some more properties of CSS. So it will be very convenient for you guys to design very beautiful and attractive website. So today we are going to understand about the font properties. We are going to understand about the link properties, position and display and the float. So these 5 properties we are going to understand today. So let's start our journey with font property. So what is font? You can increase the size of your font. Now that depends upon entirely your requirement. What font size you require. Even you can change the font style as well. Like if you want it to be in italic or normal. So we have some tags in HTML. Well, but apart from HTML also, you can do the same thing in CSS. That's the benefit we get from the CSS as well. Okay, so already I have created some template, so I'm gonna just copy that template. Okay, I'm just gonna copy that template and I'm gonna paste in our file. So I have created a file known as font.html. I'm gonna save it and just let's see in the browser how it is going to look like. Okay, this is how some design I have created, right guys? So you know this thing, right? Already I have created, and you are familiar with the all that properties, like you know what is color, width, height, box shadow, margin top, border, margin, background. Just to save our time I have did it. Now what I'm gonna do in this div, I want to write a property known as p, and I'm gonna give Lauren 5 and the tab. Now when I'm gonna save it, let's come to our browser and see how it is going to look like. Now it is looking something like this, right? Now I want this should be in the center. So for that, what I have to do here, I'm gonna add text align center. Now when I'm going to align this property, let's see. Yeah, now our text is in the center. Fine. Now I want this particular P should come little bit down, like it is not looking that good. I want it should come into the center. So for that, we have a selector called P, and I'm gonna say, okay, P, and let me use some margin from top. I want 30 pixel. Let's see how it is going to look like if I give the 30 pixel, and I'm going to save it. Yeah, now it is coming here little bit down I want, so I'm going to say it should be 35. Now yes, now it is looking like it is in the middle. Now this is a default font size what we are getting. Now suppose I want it to increase or decrease. Okay, now for that, what we have to do, we have to give a property called font size. Now you have to give the value, like I'm giving 10 pixel. I'm gonna save it, come to your browser and refresh the page. Now you are able to see the font size has been decreased. Now if I want to increase, I'm gonna give it as a 30 pixel and save it. Come here, refresh. Now yeah, now your font size is able to increase. So that's what the font size property is all about. Now I'm gonna take one more div. So just I'm gonna copy it. I took one more div. Now for this div, I want to give id equals to div1, and for this div, I want to give the id equals to div2. Okay, fine. Now I want to tell you one more property that is called font style. Now what is a font style? Now font style is nothing but it is going to represent your text in italic format or normal format. Okay, this is a font style property. So how we have to use the font style? Let's come to our code. So I want to select this div, right? So I already gave some ID. So how can I select that div using the ID hash d2? Now I want to select this p inside this div. So I can select, if I select a p, I mean tag name, then it is going to apply these properties for all the tags, right? But I don't want that property should be applied for all the p's. I want some property should apply to this p which is inside a div and whose id is g2. So I can give you here one more id, but I don't want it to give the id. We have one more way to select the element. So now what, how we have to select, just see here. Now I have selected the div, right? Now this is a parent, right, for this p. So I have selected the parent. Now when I'm going to give space and I'm going to say p, and I'm going to mention some properties here. It means this particular properties, whatever I'm going to mention, apply to the p whose parent is d2, whose parents id is d2, the whose parents id is d2. So this div id is d2, so apply the properties to the child of this div whose tag is p. So now I'm going to say here something like so let me take this margin first. So I'm going to copy this margin here. Then apart from that, I want to use some font style, right? Font style. So I'm going to say italic. Save it and comes to your browser, refresh it. Now you are able to see this particular text is italic. Now in the same way I want to do for this also. I want to apply this property to the p whose parent is div and whose id is d1. So first of all we have to select the parent. So how we have to select the parent element id, hash id name id. Okay, now this div has a child called p. So how can we select p, I mean, how can we select a child of that particular element? Space, we have to give the tag name p. This is one more approach. Okay, we have so many approach. We will be seeing each and every approach step by step according to our requirement. But the basic approaches of selectors already I have taught you, right? If the people who are new, if they don't know how to we select any HTML element in our CSS, just refer, I mean, just refer our previous videos. Okay, that's cool. Now I'm gonna save it. Comes to a browser. I'm gonna say, yeah. Now see. Now the font size has been decreased. Means this properties is applied to the p whose parent is div and whose id is d2. And this particular property is applied to the p who, okay. Now for this p, these properties are applied, for this p, these properties are applied. Now we are able to separate the different p's. Apart from this selector, we can give one more id here or class, or we can give id and class. We can write here, but I don't want to write much more code. I want to save it. So this is how we can do. Okay, this is one kind of approach. Now you saw the font style and normal. You guys know how it is going to look like. If I remove this, by default it will be normal. I'm going to save it, come here and refresh. Now this is the normal style. Okay, now we saw the font size and font style. In the same way, I want font weight. Okay, now it is going to take your, now here I'm going to say D3. Now this font weight is a property which is going to transform your normal text into a bold text. We can do that same thing in HTML by taking the B tag, right? Now here I'm going to say hash D3 space P, and I'm going to say this time I want this margin top as it is. Apart from that, I want font weight should be bold. Save it and comes to here, refresh. Now you are able to see this particular text is in a bold format. So this is how we can do a multiple ways some stylings on your font. Okay, now one more font we have, that is nothing but your font family. Now by default this is how your font format is, right? Now this is how a format of your font is, this one. Now you wanted to change the format of your font. So how can we do? That's very easy. Just let's take one more div. I'm gonna take one more div, and this time I want to id should be d4. Okay, fine guys, id should be d4. Now here I want to say hash d4 space p and apply margin. Top should be some 35 pixel. Apart from that, I want font I want font family should be something like impact something I'm going to select. Okay guys, just save it, comes to here and just refresh. Now you are able to see the font format is also changed, that using the format, that is by using the property called font family. This is a font family, this is a font weight, this is your font style, and this is font size. Now these are the few properties on your font. Okay, so that's all about your font. Now let's come and understand link. Now you can give a different properties your to your link as well. Means whenever a link is going to load in your page, it should look some color. Okay, now whenever you are going to keep your mouse on that link, it should change its color. That one property. Whenever you are going to click and you are not going to remove your cursor from that, it should be something color, and when you are left that particular link, it should change into some other color. If such properties or such stylings if you want to give for your anchor tag, you can use anchor properties. So how, let's come and see. So I'm going to create one more file known as 07, and I'm going to say link.html. Okay, now I'm going to copy everything as it is from our template. Copy, come to here and just save it. By default it is going to look like something like this. Okay, fine. Now instead of p paragraph, I want to add e, and I'm going to say href some slash. Instead of slash, I want to give just hash, and I'm gonna say click me, and let me close this anchor tag from here. Okay, I have closed it. Comes to your browser, refresh it. Now you are able to see a click me, which is in a blue color by default. Now I want to select this anchor tag. How can we select? Now I want to give some id to this. Id equals to some d1, right? Now how can we select? Hash d1, okay, space a, and I want to remove that particular decoration, right? That we are able to see some underline. I want to remove that underline. So for that, we have a property called text decoration should be none. Okay. Now text should be, whenever I'm going to see first time, it should be white, something white. Just refresh it. Okay. Let me see how it is going to look like. Now this is how we have did it. Now if you want this should be in the center, then what we have to do, we know, right? Just tell text align center. Okay, now let me remove this margin top from here. I'm gonna say save it. Now we got this particular text in the here. Now I want this text should be in the middle or something like that. So that's very easy, we already know. Just margin top should be 35 pixel. Save it, comes to your browser. Now every property you have to write according to your styles, okay, according to your requirement. Now margin is not applying to the anchor tag, that's because, so let me see, the margin is not applying here, so let me remove it. I wanna say anchor tag should be displayed. Okay, href anchor tag, fine. I'm gonna say margin top should be 35 pixel, and save the file. Comes to your browser, refresh it. No, it is not applying for this one. Anchor tag, why it's not applying, I don't know. So for hash t1 we gave right properly. Yeah, we gave everything right, only margin is not applying because anchor tag doesn't apply this margin. Okay, so as of now just remove it, and let comes to our code, and let us understand something more about this one. Now my requirement is something very easy. Now by default it is looking like a click me, right? It is looking in the white color. So I'm gonna say this link should by default look in by default it should look in yellow color. So what I have to do, I'm gonna copy this particular style, enter, and I'm gonna say colon link. Okay, now whenever I said colon link, and I'm gonna say it should be yellow. Okay, now whenever the page is going to load, it should look like in yellow. Now it is looking like a yellow. Now whenever I'm going to keep my cursor, it means I'm going to hover. So for that also we have to say anchor hover, and this time the color should be something like red. Means whenever I'm going to keep a cursor on my that particular link, that color should change from yellow to red. That's my requirement. Apart from that, it should increase its font size. So I'm gonna say font size should be something like 20 pixel. Okay, I'm gonna save it, comes to a browser. Now whenever I'm going to load this page, it is looking like yellow color. So whenever I'm going to keep my cursor, my color has changed from yellow to the red color, as well as my font size is also increasing. Right now whenever I'm gonna visit it, it is nothing but whenever I'm gonna visit, then it should change into black. Means after clicking that particular link. So just copy, I'm gonna say whenever I'm gonna change click on that particular thing, it should change into the black color. So how can we say? We should say visited. It is nothing but once you have visited it. Okay, now I don't want font size to be something. I'm going to save it. Apart from that, we have one more property called activate. So whenever you are going to click on that button, it should change into blue color. So let me come here in your code. So I'm gonna say okay, whenever I'm gonna active is nothing but whenever you are going to click on that one, clicking, but you are not going to remove your. So I'm going to say it should be whenever I'm going to click on that particular link, it should change into blue color. Okay, fine. I'm going to save it. Now comes to your browser and just refresh it. Now see, by default it is a yellow color. Now whenever I'm going to keep my cursor on that, it should be changed. Now I'm clicking, but I'm not removing my cursor. See, I clicked, but I didn't remove my cursor. It is in a blue color. Now whenever I'm going to remove, it's a black color. That's all about your font. I mean, all about your links. So a colon link, this particular style is called your pseudo selector. You have to give a colon and you have to give one property, like it should be focused, hover, or link. I'm saying it is a link. Means by default, whenever my page is going to load, right, that time the link should appear in yellow color. That's fine. Whenever I'm going to keep my cursor, I'm not clicking on it, I'm just keeping my cursor on that particular link. That particular property is called hover, right? So whenever it is a hover, the color should change to red and font size should change to 20 pixel. In the same way, whenever I'm going to click the button but I'm not going to remove the cursor, that time the color should be blue and the font size should be 20 pixel only. Okay, and whenever I'm going to remove my cursor, it means I already clicked the button, I have visited that particular link, it should change to black. That's all about your links. Now let us understand most important properties like position. Now we have the 5 ways of position. One is called static, then we have something like relative, absolute, fixed, and the sticky. Now let us come to our folder structure, and let me create one more file called as 08, and I'm gonna say this time positions.html. So this time I'm gonna copy same thing, copy it and come to your position.html and just paste it. Right click, open in the default browser. Okay, we have opened it. Right now this is our div. Right, by default I don't want any margin, so I'm gonna remove this margin, so it should be in the left top corner. So refresh it. Now it is in the left one. Right, I'm gonna this remove this margin as well, so just refresh it. So it should be in the top. Now this is our div. By default every div position will be static. Right, now suppose I'm saying move this particular div to some left, move this div 200 pixel left. So for that we have a property called left, and I'm saying move this div left. How much you want to move? You should move 200 pixel left. So when I'm going to save it and comes to your browser, now you see now div is not moving because by default the position of this particular div is static. Once you define any element as a static, it is not going to move anywhere. Right, now just consider I'm going to change the position. I'm going to say position relative. Okay, now see, already I have added the left property, means I'm saying this div should move 200 pixel left. So let me comes to our browser. Now this div is nothing but your relative. Now this is able to move, means what you have to understand is here by default every element position is static. Once the position of that element is static, that element cannot move apart from your text align all that left right. Okay, so if you want to move like 200 pixel 300 pixel, then you have the property like properties like left, right, bottom and top. But now this element is not able to move in the first scenario because by default every element position value is static, so static elements are not going to move. Now what is relative? Now second we have a relative. Now relative is nothing but it is going to move, but the starting point, the reference point, it is going to consider its own border. Now this is its border. Right, from here I want it should go down, means I want some top should be some 50 pixel. From top I want some 50 pixel, so I'm going to add a property called top 50 pixel. Save it and just come to here, refresh. Now you are able to see this is able to move. Now what is the absolute? Right, now absolute, in absolute also your element is going to move, but it is going to consider the reference point of its parent element. Means what? Let me say, let me tell you. Now this is our div. Right, I want to create one more div. I have created one more div. Let me give id equals to something like parent, and let me give id for this div, id equals to child, and let me change some css property. Instead of giving div tag, here I'm gonna say hash parent, and this time I'm gonna say the width should be some 700 and height should be 500. Okay, I'm gonna save it, and I'm gonna remove this left, I'm gonna remove this top. I'm gonna say margin auto. Margin auto is nothing but it is going to come inside a center. Okay, now I'm gonna refresh it. Just come here and refresh. Now you are able to see this div. Now I want to bring this div into the center, so it's not margin center, it should be margin auto. Save it. Now it came into the center. Right, now inside this div I want to create one more div. So we have already created, but we didn't give any styling. So I'm gonna say hash child, right? This time I'm gonna say width. Width should be something like 300 pixel, and height should be 100 pixel, right? Some border should be there. I'm gonna say border 1 pixel, solid yellow, or I'm gonna say 4. And apart from that, let me give box shadow as well. So let me use some box shadow. Now let me see how it is going to look like. Now this is a div. Let me use some background color as well, right? So I'm gonna say background color should be something like blue violet. So I think blue violet we should give something else. Okay, now this is the div, right? Now let me give some margins. Okay, I'm saying margin should be some 10 pixel. Save it, come here. Yeah, now this is our parent div and this is our child div. Now whenever I'm going to use the position as an absolute, then that particular div is going to consider its parent element as a reference point, right? Now for this div the parent will be this div, for this div the parent will be the body, right? So now if I want to move this div, then this div will be moved respective of its parent, right? For example, so I'm gonna say move this div. So before that we have to give the position of this div should be absolute. If I want to give the position of child as an absolute, it's mandatory that the position of your parent should be relative. Okay, now I give absolute, means I'm saying this child you should move corresponding to its parent. Okay, reference should be its parent. Now I'm saying move this left to 500 pixel, not 500, I'm gonna say move it to the 50 pixel. Save it and comes to your browser. Whenever I'm going to refresh it, now this div is moving to the 50 pixel. Now it will move inside in your parent div only, right? Now if I say top, move from top some 100 pixel, save it and refresh it. Now it is moving here only, it is not considering body border as a reference, it is considering the reference point as its parent element. So this is the difference between your relative and your absolute. Absolute will always consider its reference as its parent, whereas relative will consider its own border as a parent reference. So that's the difference between your two things, right? Relative and the absolute. Apart from that, we have some more things, like one is fixed. Now what is a fixed? If you fix one element, now that element is not going to move from there even though you scroll your page. So what is the meaning of that? Let's comes to our page and I'm going to give some body, right? And I'm gonna increase the body height to 5000 pixel so that we can get the scroll bar. So I'm gonna refresh it. Now we got a scroll bar, right? Now just consider I want to create one more div. So how can we create a div? So just I'm gonna say div. Okay, fine. Now for this div I want to give id equals to d3, right? For this d3 I want to give some stylings. So I'm gonna say hash d3. So let's come to the template and copy the styles from here and comes to your particular position and just remove this particular div and come here and remove one more. Okay, fine, we have give we told hash d3, right? Now this style should apply for that particular div. Yes, now we got this div somewhere here, right? Now I want to change the background color. So I'm gonna say it should be something like pink. Save it and come here. Yes, now you are able to see some different color. Let me change one more color from here. Let me say it should be red. Okay, now this is the div. Now I want to make the position of this div should be static. So let me bring that particular div in the left corner. So I'm gonna remove this margin from here. Fine. I'm gonna say remove this as well. Now save it, come here and refresh it. Now this div is able to see something here, right? Now whenever I'm scrolling, right, this div is also moving because by default the position of this div is static. Now if I change the position of this div from static to fixed, so I'm gonna say the position of this div should be fixed. So what is the meaning of fixed? Now that div is fixed there. You scroll or don't scroll, that doesn't going to affect that div, right? So I'm gonna come here, save. Okay, I think I already saved there. Cancel, come here. Yeah, I have saved. Refresh. Now you see, whenever I'm going to scroll, right? Now if I'm scrolling, that div is fixed there. That div is not moving. I'm scrolling the page, but that div is not moving. If you're not able to understand, let me keep this div in the top. I'm going to remove from here and I'm going to keep this div in the top. Okay. On here, I want to write some P and I'm going to say lorem some 200. Okay. Tab. Save it. Comes to your browser. Refresh it. Okay. Now just see. Now this div is fixed. Whenever I'm going down, this content is moving, this particular div is also moving, but that particular div is sticked, that is fixed, right? This is the benefit you get when you use the property called position is to be fixed. Means this div is going to be fixed to that particular axis. It is not going to move whether you are going to scroll your page or you doesn't scroll. That doesn't depend upon this particular thing. Okay, that's all about your fixed. Now let's understand what is the sticky, right? Now to understand the sticky thing, see we have one more like known as sticky. We have saw static, by default is static. We saw relative, we know absolute, we know fixed. Now what is sticky? Now just suppose I have changed the position of this div from fixed to sticky. It means the if I scroll the page, that div should move. Let me see whether it is moving. Yeah, it is moving. Now what is the benefit that you get from the stick? Now you want this div should come up to here, up to the top, and it should stick there. Now if I'm scrolling, this div should not scroll, it should be sticked there. So for that, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say top 0 pixel. So I'm saying whenever I'm going to move my div from down or it to from down to up, whenever it comes to a top, then that div should be sticked there even though I'm scrolling my web page. Gonna refresh. Now this div is here, right? I'm gonna scroll, I'm going down, means this element is moving up, now this div is sticked. I'm scrolling still down, every element is going, but this element is not going because the position of this particular element I have fixed, I mean I have sticked it. Means I have sticked this particular element on the top of 0. Now you want it should not be fixed at the top 0. It should fix at the position where from top it should be 20 pixel. From top I want from top it should be 20 pixel. Okay, fine. Now I'm going to refresh it. Now it is fixed here as well, right? Okay, now I'm going to refresh, right? Now this element is here. I'm saying from here 20 pixel is nothing but somewhere here. Now this div should fix here. It should not move above that particular 20 pixel. So just I'm going to refresh. I'm going to just scroll. Now you see, now it is moving. This space is 20 pixel, right? I'm saying from top 20 pixel at that particular position, this particular div should be fixed. I mean, it should be sticked. So it has been sticked. Now in some Facebook or some websites you see, right? Whenever you're moving or scrolling down, your content is moving up, right? And at particular point your navigation will be sticked there and the content will be going down. I mean it will be moving up. In that scenario we are going to use this thing, right? Now that's all about your position. Now let us understand about display. Now what is display? Now your every element whatever you have in HTML, your tags, that will be divided into two categories. One is called block element, one is called inline element. So let me create a file called 09 and I'm gonna say something like display.html. Okay, fine, right? Now let me create the skeleton of our HTML doc tab. We have created it, right? Now I'm gonna remove this meta tag. Fine. Now what I told you, right? Let me open the paint. Now our elements in HTML, nothing but our tags, are divided into two categories. One is called block and one is called inline. What is the meaning of block and what is the meaning of inline? The block elements are going to take complete width of your body. Now just consider this is our body, right? Now if you say any block element, that block element is going to take complete width of your body. Okay, now what are inline element? Inline element is going to take the space depending upon your content. For example, if you have a word like Kabir, then it is going to take this much space. Now if you generate one sentence and that sentence contains this much space, then it will consider this much space. So that's the difference between your block element and inline element. Example, your div is block element, means whenever you are going to write a div, it is going to take complete width of that particular body. Now after div, if you write one more div, it will come into the next line because the width of that particular row has been occupied by that particular div. In the same way, inline, for example, we have the span tag. Now in the span, if you write a letter or a sentence, it is going to take the width depending upon the your content width. If the content is this much, it is going to take this much. After that span, if you're writing one more span, it will not come in second line. It will start from here because still some width is pending, right? Some still we have some width. So it will occupy the remaining width. Such kind of elements are called inline elements. Now let us understand it by the code. Now just consider I'm going to write here h2. h2 will come under the block element, right? By default, the display property of h2 is block. So here I'm going to write something like Sachin. Okay. Now after Sachin, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to write something like Dhoni. Okay, fine. save it. Now let's right click and come to the default. Now you are able to see this particular h2 is taking complete width, right? Because this comes under block element. If you are trying to write one more h2 element, it is coming in the same second line because already this width has been occupied by this first h2. Still, if you want to see, then just give a background color. Let's write style. So instead of writing here, let me write here style equals to background color should be something brown. Means I'm giving a background color for this h2. Now this background color is going to occupy depending upon the width of this h2, right? Now let me come to the browser and say, now see, now the background color is occupying complete width of your body. That's because this h2 comes under your block element. Block elements are going to take complete width of your body of that particular row, right? In the same way, if you want to see the Dhoni as well, just copy this style tag, and this time I'm gonna say something like hello, and here let me say style, let me say body color should be white. Refresh and comes to a browser, refresh it. Now you are able to see this particular h2 is also taking complete width of that particular row, right? Because this comes under your block element. In the same way, your image tag, your span tag, all are inline. So I'm writing one span here, right? I'm saying Kabir, refresh it, comes to your browser and just see. Now because it will look in white color, let me remove this property, save it. Now you are able to see Kabir, right? Now this is a span, right? We don't have any space here, that's why it came in the next line. Now I'm writing one more span, right? This time I'm writing something like lorem 10, save it. Now this is a span, this is a span. By default this is inline, right? Now whenever I'm going to save, after Kabir this lorem is coming because span comes under inline element, so it is going to take the width depending upon the content. So the first span content is this much, so it is going to take the width of your content. Now we have so much space, I mean space is pending, right? We have so much space is pending, so again we wrote one more span, means it's one more inline element, right? Now that inline element will start from here because we have pending space. That's why if you write h2 now h2 is a block element, it is going to come in the next line and it is going to take complete width, right? I'm here saying something like here Santosh. Now refresh it, comes to your browser. Now you are able to say Santosh, right? Now Santosh is taking this complete width. Now, using the CSS, you can change default properties of this element, right? How? So let us see that one. By default, h2 comes under block element. Now I want this h2 should be inline element. So for that, what we have to do, we have to write the tag h2, and I'm gonna say this time display inline. Okay, now I'm saying h2 display should be inline, and let me remove this h2. I'm gonna save it. Okay, now by default this is the thing. Now see, now this particular Sachin, right, is going to be inline, means it is going to take the width depending upon the content. Now this is also inline, so it took content. Now we have pending space, so next span is your inline element, that's why it came here. Now just consider, I'm gonna say here something like h1. Now h1 comes under block element, right? Now refresh it. Now this is your lorem, is nothing but your h1. Now this was h2 is also by default block, but we changed the property from block to inline. Now this h1 we didn't by default, it is a block, so it is coming in the next line, and which is taking complete width of your that particular row. And we have the span which is inline, and it is taking coming in the same line. Now I want to change the property of this display from inline to block. So by default span will have inline. Right now I want to change span. I'm gonna say it should change display from inline to block. Means it should take complete width of your particular body. Now Kabir should take complete width of this row, and Lorem also should take complete width of this row. Right now, so it should come into the next line because Kabir took complete width. See, now Kabir to complete width, Lorem to complete width. Still, if you wanted to know, you can give a background style and you can verify it. Now that's about your displays, inline, block, and we have none also. None is means if you don't want it to be inline or block, you can write the property none. Now what is inline block? Now inline block is nothing but the elements will come in inline style, but by default some padding will be added to that particular element. That thing we will be seeing with some example. Okay, now you have to remember this one: position, display, and font. Now what is float? Float is nothing but, let me come here. Okay, let me create one more file known as 10. I'm gonna say float dot html. Save it. Right now I want the skeleton of our html. So for that, what we have to do, we have to write doc tab. Now we got skeleton, right? I'm gonna remove this meta. Okay, now just consider I have one p and I'm gonna generate some content like 100. Okay, fine. Now if you come to your browser, now it is going to look like something like this. Now I want to display one image, right? Now if I want to display one image, first I want to display some image. I will say some src equals to, and I need to give some path, some image, right? Image. Now let me say card 6, something like that. Width should be something 500 300 pixel, and your height should be some 200 pixel. I'm gonna save it. Now comes to your browser and just refresh it. Now this is how you are, by default it is looking like this, right? Because your image is your inline element and p is your block element. That's why it is coming in second line. Now sometimes we get the requirement, we need this image here, but some space is pending here, right? Now I want this particular content should come here. This particular content should start from here. Now how can we do that? So for that we have a property called float. So what we are going to do, we are going to write a style tag. Okay, in the style tag I want to provide image. For image, the float should be left. Now whenever I'm going to say image, the float should be left, the image is coming to your left side. The image will come to your left side, and this, the space is remaining, right? The next element will start from this pending space. Now if I refresh it, now you are able to see this particular lorem has started from here. Now sometimes you get requirement, the content should come here, means in the left side, and this image should come in the right side. So for that you have to change the value of float from left to from right. Now comes to your browser, refresh it, See, the content has started from here and this is coming here. That's because we give the property known as float. Now in real time, sometimes we write some navigation links here, right? Some links we will be having. Whenever you are going to click on that links, that content should come here, right? In that scenarios, we use this properties, float properties. I hope you have understood the float property. Now we have only two values for the float, that is left and that is right. We don't have any value like a center. Now that's all about your CSS. So we saw good properties in the CSS. So we are going to stop the CSS here and we are going to enter into HTML from next session. In next session, we are going to see the form elements like input elements. Now here we can design login page, we can design registration page, all that things, right? After finishing HTML, we will be doing one project. After doing that, again, we'll come back to CSS and we'll learn some more properties. I think some 3 to 4 sessions are pending for CSS and one session for your HTML and one session for your project. So this week we are going to cover all this, and from next week we are going to start Bootstrap. Okay, with the Bootstrap, and from 15th October we are going to start JavaScript as well. Bootstrap maximum it is going to take 4 to 5 sessions, right? Even if it takes more sessions, no problem, but parallelly we are going to start with JavaScript, and JavaScript we are going to cover in very depth. I think JavaScript should take 15 to 20 days, means 15 to 20 sessions. So that's what I'm thinking. If it extends, let's extend it, but we need to learn everything in the depth. That's our point. So that's all for this session, guys. Thank you for watching my video. And guys, one thing you have to remember, if you want to join our WhatsApp group, Facebook page, Telegram group, Instagram, everything is present in our description. So all the links are present in our description. You can join that particular all social media. Thanks, guys.